Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive here. Today, we're zeroing in on one of the most, dynamic cities in the world, New York City. Specifically, we're tuning our attention to the upcoming 2025 mayoral election and our focus, a detailed look at Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa's platform.
Right.
We've sifted through his campaign statements, public appearances, various sources to give you a comprehensive understanding of his vision for the city.
Yeah, try and get the full picture.
Exactly. Our mission is to unpack his key proposals, understand his background a bit, and pull out the insights that'll quickly get you up to speed on what he's actually advocating for.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Indeed. And, for anyone who's followed New York City politics, Curtis Sliwa is, he's a long-standing figure, very recognizable.
Oh, definitely, the Red Beret, right.
That's him,
Yeah.
founder of the Guardian Angels. So this deep dive isn't just about listing points. It's about figuring out what his vision truly means for the city's future.
Our goal is really to extract those crucial nuggets of knowledge, straight from his campaign statements and his public record, offering you a clear, balanced picture.
Absolutely. And if there's one area that immediately jumps out as a cornerstone, it's got to be public safety and crime reduction.
That seems central, yeah.
He's proposing a really significant increase in NYPD presence. Sees it as fundamental to restoring order.
And what does that look like, specifically?
Well, we're talking about a commitment to hire 7,000 additional uniformed officers.
7,000?
Yeah. And deploy 500 undercover officers specifically for subway patrols, tackling crime, but also fare evasion. It's a very direct approach.
What's particularly insightful here is the direct line he draws between judicial policy, like bail reform, and street crime.
Right, he connects those dots very explicitly.
He does. Sliwa argues that former Governor Cuomo's bail reforms led directly to violent offenders getting released and then committing more crimes.
So his solution is?
Well, a central part of his agenda is a strong push to repeal those reforms. It signals a clear intent to bring back a more, let's say, stringent system.
Gotcha. And it's not just about more police overall, is it? He really seems to drill down into subway safety as its own thing.
Yeah, it's a distinct priority, though obviously related.
He talks about prosecuting crimes against women and minorities on the subway, improving those assistance booths.
Which sometimes feel a bit neglected, maybe.
Could be. And this interesting idea, a task force of certified social workers, specifically to assist the mentally ill who might be living in the subway tunnels.
That's a fascinating angle. Mixing social work with safety.
It is. It feels like a multifaceted approach to a really complex problem.
And this focus on community-level safety, it connects right back to his identity, doesn't it? Founder of the Guardian Angels.
Absolutely. He's advocating for civilian patrols to enhance safety, which aligns perfectly with what the Angels have always done.
Which does raise an important question, I think. What's the role he sees for these civilian groups versus traditional policing? How do they work together in his vision?
That is a crucial question. Are they partners? Is one supporting the other?
It suggests maybe a blend of formal law enforcement and community initiatives could really change how safety feels neighborhood by neighborhood.
A broader philosophy, maybe. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, let's look at another huge NYC issue, housing and affordability.
Always top of mind for New Yorkers.
And here we see a similar kind of theme emerging, right? Community and local control. Slay was clearly opposing current development plans, especially Mayor Adams' City of Yes proposals.
Which are aimed at boosting housing supply quite aggressively.
Exactly. Slow's counter is basically restore zoning control to local residents, community boards, city council members. The idea is prioritizing affordability and community stability over, what he sees as maybe uncontrolled development.
And that focus on shifting power, it extends to property taxes too.
Ah, yes, the property tax reform ideas. Tell us about those.
Well, one really striking element is who he thinks should benefit. He proposes a 2% cap on annual tax levy increases.
Okay, that would give homeowners predictability.
Definitely. He also wants regular reviews, like every 10 years, of tax exemptions. And he wants to end tax breaks for some big institutions. Think Madison Square Garden, NYU, Columbia University.
Wow, ending their tax breaks, that's bold.
It is. And on the other side, tax breaks for senior homeowners earning less than $75,000 a year.
So it's a very targeted approach to financial relief. Seems like he's trying to level the playing field, maybe.
That seems to be the aim, clearly favoring individual homeowners, especially seniors, over large institutions in this policy.
And building on that, he stresses affordable housing, specifically for working class residents. But his approach to NYCHA, the Public Housing Authority, is interesting.
How so?
He's opposed to using public-private partnerships for repairs. Instead, he argues for just using federal funding more efficiently, directly.
So a more direct government-led approach there, rather than bringing in private companies for NYCHA.
Seems like it. Okay, so moving from the buildings themselves, let's talk about homelessness and mental health. How does he plan to tackle that?
Well, you see both a compassionate and a sort of structured approach here. What really stands out, I think, is integrating mental health experts directly into police operations.
How would that work?
He talks about creating special units, right, in each police precinct, staffed with mental health professionals. They'd respond to calls involving emotionally disturbed individuals.
So taking some pressure off regular officers.
That's the stated goal. Reduce the burden on police who might not have the specific training, maybe de-escalate situations better, and get people more appropriate care.
That's a key difference. Shifting some of that immediate response. And he also emphasizes dignity and privacy for the homeless, especially in the subways.
Right. Improving conditions in shelters, particularly for those with mental health challenges. Trying to provide a safer, more humane environment.
It addresses a very visible and difficult aspect of city life.
Now, here's where his platform gets really interesting and maybe quite unique for a mayor. Animal welfare.
Ah, yes, the cats.
Exactly. His personal commitment is clear living with 16 rescue cats himself.
16, wow.
And he's proposed turning Gracie Mansion, the mayor's official home, into a cat and dog sanctuary if he wins.
That's certainly a statement, not just a personal hobby, but a platform point.
A very dedicated one. It signals a unique priority for a potential mayor.
And it goes beyond just Gracie Mansion, right? There are actual policy proposals too.
Oh yeah, concrete policies. He wants all NYC animal shelters to become no-kill shelters. That's a big operational shift.
Huge.
He also wants to strengthen the NYPD unit that handles animal cruelty cases, the Elevating Crimes Against Animals Division, make sure those cases get pursued properly.
Okay.
And maybe surprisingly, he wants to fight restrictive pet rules in NYCHA and even private rentals, make it easier for people to actually have pets.
So a broad commitment to animal well-being across the board. It's definitely distinctive.
Very much so. Beyond these specific areas, his broader vision touches on fiscal responsibility, education, quality of life stuff.
Right, the bigger picture. What's his fiscal approach look like?
Interestingly, he talks about austerity measures, belt-tightening in city government, expecting budget cuts across agencies.
But wait, didn't we just talk about hiring 7,000 more police officers? How does that square with budget cuts?
That's the interesting tension. He expects cuts, maybe even within the NYPD's existing budget in some areas, but still prioritizes that significant new hiring for public safety. It suggests a belief in perhaps getting more out of existing resources, focusing on efficiency.
Doing more with less, except for the police hires? It's an intriguing balance. He's also floated a trial program for universal basic income.
Which is fascinating, right? Because that's often seen as a more progressive policy.
Exactly. Introducing UBI, even as a trial, into a generally conservative platform suggests maybe a nuanced take on poverty, though you have to wonder how it fits with the austerity talk.
Good point. Then there's education and the workforce. He supports keeping the SHSAT, the Specialized High Schools Admissions Test.
Which is always a hot topic in New York.
Always. But he pairs that with boosting vocational training in charter schools, preparing kids for trade careers, offering another path.
So maintaining the test, but also adding alternatives.
Seems so. And he supports worker flexibility, letting workers choose if they're classified as employees or independent contractors.
Okay, reflects the changing nature of work.
Right. So if you put it all together, the governance approach seems focused on practical skills, worker choice, alongside those more traditional pathways.
And he also seems to really position himself as the candidate for the outer boroughs.
Definitely focuses on quality of life issues that resonate there. Things like, garbage management, fare evasion, everyday concerns.
Makes sense. He's proposed increasing parks funding to 3% of the city budget.
Improving green spaces.
And he's pledged to keep traditional Medicare for city retirees. Strong stance against changes there.
So he's aiming to address those daily worries for a wide slice of New Yorkers. And tying back to safety, he wants direct communication between Gracie Mansion and every single police precinct, all 78 of them.
For better coordination.
That's the idea. Improve responsiveness. We should also note he's spoken out against critical race theory in schools and opposed vaccine mandates.
Okay, so reflecting a more conservative stance on some social issues too adds another layer.
It does.
It's really clear that Slomo's identity, as this community activist, the Guardian Angels founder,
Yeah.
it's deeply baked into his policies.
It seems to inform everything.
He really emphasizes a populist approach, often saying he's not backed by big real estate or special interests, positions himself as someone uniting diverse communities focused on working class New Yorkers. Safety, affordability, quality of life.
Absolutely. But crucially, we have to acknowledge, like any long-standing public figure, his campaign isn't without controversy. And these things can influence how people see the platform. We need to mention them impartially.
Right, context is important.
For instance, critics often bring up his 1992 admission. He admitted back then to faking some crimes for publicity for the Guardian Angels.
That's significant history.
It is, and more recently, in 2024, there was an incident where the Guardian Angels wrongly identified a man as a migrant shoplifter. That sparked accusations of racism.
Okay.
So this raises an important question, doesn't it? How does a candidate's past and these controversies, how do they shape public perception and trust in their current proposals, regardless of the merits of the proposals themselves?
That's a really vital point for voters to consider, always. That interplay between the person, their history, and their plans.
Exactly. It's complex.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today. From Curtis Lewa's big focus on public safety, that layered approach to subway crime, through his ideas on housing, property taxes, homelessness, mental health.
And even his very unique commitment to animal welfare.
Can't forget the cats. We also touched on his broader vision, fiscal ideas, education, quality of life, and how his identity and, yes, past controversies fit into the picture.
And this deep dive, the whole goal was to give you a comprehensive look at his proposed vision, drawn straight from what he and his campaign have said publicly.
Right.
So, as you think about these specifics, consider how they might genuinely reshape daily life in New York if they were put into practice. How does that long-standing identity, the Guardian Angel founder, and those controversies we mentioned, how do they interact with the promises he's making now?
Lots to think about.
Definitely.
Exactly. And that leads us right to our final provocative thought for you to mull over. In a city as diverse, as dynamic as New York, what specific aspects of Sliwa's platform do you think would have the most immediate impact on daily life, and why?
Good question to ponder.
Something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We look forward to exploring more with you next time.